Hope you had a good break, and welcome back. And thanks for the invitation. It's super nice to be here, hearing the stories from others, also seeing how we do things in Singapore. Is it the same? Is it different? I have a few stories here, actually. Yeah, and I like conferences. Last time I was in person in a design conference, I met this lady who's now my wife, and that's why I live in Singapore now. But yeah, I wanted to start with this question. When I heard this, I thought it's an interesting question. You can have so many different interpretations of this, and I try to approach this from my work, of course, and I give you a bit of a story. So, you know, how many of you have been to Singapore, visited? Okay, quite many actually, a lot of you. You might know that Singapore is always like, we always want to be the best in everything. We always want to be the small country, but the best. And some of the things, I mean, we are not doing so bad. I mean, we are one of the safest countries in the world. We are one of the wealthiest countries in the world. And we have a very high digital connectivity and a lot of other things. Then something that is not really a ranking, but we are also a super aging society since this year. And why I'm saying this is that if you really combine these four kind of random things, you get something that is relevant for my work, because we are actually a prime target for scammers, right? And this is a big thing in Singapore, like nationally, a high priority agenda, and also in the bank. And sometimes when we try to prevent scams, what we do is we try to add friction to the big payments. Like if you are making a big transfer to some new recipient, we want to add a bit of friction so that the customer would stop and think twice. Is this a scam? Do you really want to make this? And while it's annoying for some customers, we feel like we are responsible when we add this friction. And then back to the question of the human being the bottleneck, I feel like this can be also translated into design process, that if we add a bit of friction to the process, we are actually being responsible. And that's why I say no, we are not the last bottleneck, but we are the intentional friction in the process to address the right problems, do the right thing, and really make a difference for our customers. If you disagree, that's completely fine. We can have a chat. And maybe even I disagree after some talks, but this is my statement now. So, so yes, I'm finished. I work in Singapore as a principal service designer in this bank called DBS. I'm assuming not everyone is familiar with this bank. I'm gonna share a bit of the context. But yeah, I moved there three years ago, and before that I was also working in another bank in the Nordics, so I roughly knew a bit of the context. But DBS is one of the big banks in Singapore, and we are mostly located in Singapore, like all the headquarters and everything is in Singapore. We do operate in some of the big Asian markets, and especially for design and digital, we have India, China, Indonesia, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Singapore. Huge markets, a lot of people, probably like 4 billion people in this area. And we have consumer and business banking. So to do all this, we have also a huge design team. It's, I think, 120 plus designers. We are all in Singapore. We are centralized there. And from there, we serve regionally all these markets and also the business and the consumer banking. So when I started 3.5 years ago, the question was really that how do you introduce service design to this team and the process, and how do you find space to make service design? And I'm gonna tell something about that. I mean, coming from the Nordics, from another bank, I thought, like, how can it be so different? Like, we are using the same laptops and the Teams and the Slacks and everything. I was very wrong. It's very different. And I want to start from some of the kind of early observations from the customer side. If you have been to Singapore, you might have seen something like this. Like every cafe or shop or restaurant has this stuff there. And when I saw this for the first time, I was like, what is this nonsense? Like, how can I ever make sense of all of these things? And for my wife, it was just normal. Like, what do you mean this is? And I thought it's kind of unique. Like in the Nordics, we don't see so much of this stuff. And coming to the topic of this talk, I thought, like, maybe, is this the thing where we remove the friction from the process and we actually push the friction to the customer? So that, yeah, let's just do something and then the customer can find a way to, figure out whatever QR code you want to use. And I thought this is not aligned with my thinking at all. The second point is that Singaporeans are very demanding in terms of the customer service. It's a very different discussion. Like in the Nordics, we are closing down bank branches. We are trying to force everyone digital. But in Singapore, the branches are kind of reshaping. Like this is one of our branches. It's a cafe, basically, or like a restaurant. And yeah, it's really like, how do we, address this need for the human service? And Singaporeans are really expecting that. Maybe because they're so wealthy. Everyone except me, of course. And the third and the last point is the financial anxiety and the stress, because Singapore is like a finance hub, and there's a lot of money and like people coming from all over the world, and the cost of living is going up, and it's really a big thing. Like, how do we address this anxiety and the stress that people have? And all these things are very human, right? And we need to understand these things, like the daily banking, the customer service, when something goes wrong, and then this like financial stress. So then when I look inside, when I look at our internal processes, we do a lot of this. We do a lot of customer research and understanding customers. And we have the best seat in the house to look at the all the product teams, all the channel teams working, and we are the best ones to make sense of all of this and add this human, the responsibility into the process. But then, when I ask about the process, like how do we actually do design? It's like, oh, it's so efficient. It's like, we just do so fast, like from idea to launch, it's so fast. And while this is really good, I was very curious, like, okay, maybe this is another way to do it. I mean, I'm not used to this kind of, there's no friction, there's no hassle, there's no fuzziness anywhere. I was curious that, okay, maybe this is actually a good way to do it, and I wanted to learn this as well. But quite soon I realized that, okay, maybe actually I want to add a bit of that friction, a bit of that responsibility there, because I realized that people are not, the intention is there, like everyone wants to, of course, understand customers and do this in the right way, but we just didn't have tools to understand like what this customer insight means for the business. How does this translate for business impact? And the same with the co-creation, like how does this workshop is worth the time? Because otherwise it's just optional, otherwise it's just waste of my time, otherwise it's just slowing us down or adding complexity. And I thought like, okay, as a service designer, we try to make space for service design, and this is the opportunity for us to add this like structured fuzziness. We must get it right to really show the effort and value, and it match with the making the business impact basically. And yeah, where does this sit in the bank, this kind of complexity and the kind of the early cases for the friction and the responsibility is in these kind of moments that matter the most. So like aging services, like senior services, how do we keep our seniors active and part of the society doing their finances? Then the major life changes like moving to Singapore, how do we support that whole process? How do we make it as seamless as possible, and kind of ease the stress and the anxiety. And then of course scams is a big thing. And yeah, actually I wanted to share a bit more about the scams, because we have been working a lot on this, and I really feel like as a service designer this is one of the golden opportunities to really prove that we are here for the customer and also for the process. So yeah, the scam numbers are huge in Singapore. It's like on a different scale, 611 million in euros last year. And then, okay, Finland is a kind of similar size in country, and that's like 1/10 of that amount. And yeah, some of the cases are huge. Some crypto scams, some investment scams, there are like massive numbers. So, so we did study this a lot. Like when customers are reporting their scams, they go through this whole emotional like roller coaster, like from the shock to denial, anger, embarrassment, self-blame and hopelessness. And when they call us to report the scam, they might say things like, oh, I cannot remember doing it, or I didn't do it, or actually all my savings disappeared somewhere, and I'm so angry that I'm gonna find your CEO's number. I'm gonna call the CEO and make this a bigger case. Or they might have even very dark thoughts, something that there's no meaning to live anymore. And those are quite serious discussions. And when you imagine the customer service officer taking these calls every day, it's not an easy job. And they're actually saying that, the process is preventing them to show care and empathy, because of course they care and of course they want to do that in the right way, but now they're saying that they're so overwhelmed, they don't have the time, they can't do enough to help the customer really understand and help. And then of course then when it comes to something very serious like the not having a reason to live, then it's like we should have a therapist to take those calls, and it's not the bank's job to support, but that's the reality still. And there is no such thing as a normal case, really, when it comes to these things. So we have all this customer knowledge, and we have all this intel from our customer service, and I'm thinking, okay, let's do this in the right way. We don't want to end up in this thing where, we just do something and then customer is helpless and not knowing what to do, and then suddenly we are just like, oh, you'll figure it out. So this cannot happen. We have to do this right. So it's not rocket science, but I wanted everyone in the scam teams to come together. So there's roughly like I mean, there's a lot of people around these scams. And I brought them together for some working sessions. What can we learn from each other? Where do we sit on this customer journey? And they said that we have never done this before. Like, I know this team exists, I know you exist, but we have never done this kind of mapping together. It was really an eye-opener for them to reveal the gaps, to see the connections, see the disconnections especially, and then translating the insights into some business opportunities. And after the first session, I didn't even have to do anything, because when they got it, they were like, okay, this is awesome, and we can do so much. So one of the very nice things that the team lead said, or from the business team, that you guys added a new dimension to our thinking, and I'll remember this forever in my case studies. And there was a lot of results. Sorry, I'm kind of fast forwarding the juicy parts because of the company not allowing to show everything. But one of the key concepts was the investigation officer, which means that in these bigger scams, every victim gets their own officer, so that, you know, when the customer is calling us like, hey, are you doing anything to solve my case? Are you even working on this? Now we can say that there's one dedicated person, and every call is with that person. And it has a huge impact in building the trust between the bank and the customer, and also reduction in the repeating calls, reduction in the anxiety and stress. And of course, it also allowed our customer service officers or these investigation officers to feel like, okay, now I can do my job better. Now I can have the time with this victim. So yeah, I think this was one of the cases on our way to building this, finding the space, making the cases that, okay, we can actually be valuable in the process, and it's being responsible, it's not slowing down, it's not unnecessary. And I'm fine if the daily banking journeys are driven by efficiency. Like, some of the things have to be driven by efficiency, whether it's AI or however. And that's very natural in Singapore, based on my experience, that the efficiency, optimizing, and I think there's a lot to learn from that culture. And then also mixing with the kind of more Nordic culture, where we are very like flat hierarchy, democrat, like our roots are in democracy and everything. So it's much more natural for us to be in the same room, co-create, challenge each other, and do all these things. And that's also something, I mean, I think it's a combination of these things, and then we just need to see where do we apply and what method. Because when it comes to these critical journeys, I still see them needs to be driven by humans, because we are building these services for humans, and they are often delivered by humans. So we have this kind of service design playbooks. We have a lot of tools to uncover how you do things, how you make the fuzziness less fuzzy and actually more structured. And yeah, I think that's why my answer is that human is not the last bottleneck. Human is the intentional friction. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we noticed that you didn't manage to interview any scammers, and they're part of the process. Their insights would have helped to design the services in a better way. So
designing for scammers, yeah.
Yeah, designing together, co-creation with scammers, maybe. There are a few questions about the word friction.
Yes.
And if you introduce friction into process, that kind of creates friction with the customers who may choose to leave the bank. Do you have any reflection on that?
No, my theory is that we take the friction to ourselves, right? So that the customer doesn't face the friction. So that we solve the problems for them and we design the journey so that it's, frictionless, right? Was that the, yeah? And I don't see that in every, like all the services, like whether it's our bank or wherever I see this like 10 QR codes, and I think that's the friction that is pushed to the customer.
But in Singapore, I mean, it's mostly mobile banking. People obviously have plastic cards as well, but practically everybody is DBS's client. So, but they're also client with a good number of other banks. So maybe the situation is not so comparable to Nordics, where you wave goodbye to one bank and move to another.
Yeah, it's actually, I mean, we did some research on the use of credit cards and also use of these like rewards and cashbacks and discounts, and it's a whole new world for me as a Nordic. But these customers, they actually find it very like a good service. Like then I have an option to choose whether I want miles or I want cashbacks, I want discounts. And that's why some people have like 10 plus credit cards, and it's just like, it's very normal in there, yeah.
Was there anything else that you, going there from the Nordics and with your background, that you found really surprising? And, well, as a service designer, let's put it that way then.
I think there's, well, I think the whole, like the relocation journey, like moving to Singapore is something I was a bit annoyed first, like, okay, this seems like a very old process, but it's actually quite, I think I didn't give it a good chance even before I made a judgment, but it's actually quite digital society, and they're really striving for that. And maybe I think, for example, in this relocation journey, it's really important that we understand the foreigner. We cannot design it for the locals who are already there. So I think there's a lot of work there to understand, like, okay, who's actually coming here, and how do we serve these people, and how do we see them as one customer going through these multiple services instead of everyone having their own thinking of the segments or personas or whatever. But that's a big, like a national task. Yeah.
Well, have you heard anything, in consulting with your users or doing user research, have you heard anything there that, sounded very strange to somebody from Northern Europe, or?
Probably.
Are the user expectations that different over there from us? Well, you mentioned a few things, but if you have a fun thing to share.
I think the big difference is really the demand for customer service. And like I was doing this research and interviewing some customers, and I asked, like, how do you decide on these investment products? And we had like a screen to show to them. And she was like, oh, I would never choose. Like, I would just call. Like, I just call and ask, like, what products I should take. So it's that there's a super high trust in human customer service, and this like expectation that you get that service, whether it's by phone or you just walk to the branch or however. But it's like it's quite different, I would say, in that sense. Yeah.
Is there something that we should learn from that customer service culture or service design culture models that we should bring into our Nordic way of thinking?
Maybe it's the cafe concept as a branch, finding a new way to make it valuable other than just having the discussion that, hey, we should close down branches. Like, what else can we do there? And I think for the aging customers, because of the scams, there's a really, some senior citizens, they might be able to make transactions online, but they choose not to because they're so scared of the scams. And the news are just like boosting that all the time, like, and they don't trust themselves anymore. So that's why they go to the branch every day. And even if we give them training, how you make payments, how you do this and that, but it's still the trust and the kind of uncertainty that, okay, if I go there, then I'm sure that it's done and it's safe. So it's a tricky topic, in a way.
Well, you mentioned that every customer story is different from the other. I mean, how easy is it to design digital services then for all these very different cases? Or how much effort do you put into that, sort of discussing how are our mainstream services, how adaptable they are to the different needs or age groups or?
Yeah. There's a lot of effort put into that. And also, for example, scams and aging, these are DBS challenges, but they are also challenges on a country level. So there's a lot of collaboration between the government and the big banks and all the players involved to make these rules or guidelines also for banks that, okay, now you have to apply or you have to implement this kind of system or this kind of tool, or you have to serve your seniors in a certain way. And that is also, I think, in a way quite unique for Singapore because it's so small country and those forums where these things are discussed is so like tangible. It's not like a EU saying something, but it's actually happening right there. And the collaboration is much closer in there, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Enjoy.
Thank you.